Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back to Inside the Lines. Plenty to go over today. We got some primetime football to go over, some college basketball in the chat, NBA, college football line movement, all the things, some NFL updates. We have all the guys in the chats answering questions. John is back in the chat answering some NHL, and of course, any questions you have in general. So before we get into some college stuff, some basketball, let's start with tonight's football game. We have the Broncos going to the Bills. We actually have some model value on this game, Steven, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, the line was at Buffalo -7.5 for most of the week, but it bumped down to -7, which is that key number. So we do like Buffalo. The model has it Buffalo at -10. They've been struggling, obviously, but most of their struggles have been on the road, where they're only 1-3 straight up against the spread. At home, they're still 4-1 with a +13 point differential, which is pretty impressive. And honestly, I'm betting on Buffalo reestablishing themselves as an upper echelon team. The way they're going and the way the rest of the AFC is going, with a loss, believe it or not, their playoff chances go down to 23%. And so this is going to be a desperate team. They just need to play offense for more than half a fourth quarter, which is what they've been doing recently. So again, they statistically, they still have a top 5 offense and defense. So I like them to at the -7. I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed, and I wouldn't love it at -7.5, but 7, yes.
Right, yeah. I like that playoff threat there. Derek makes a good point in the chat. The Bills averaging 31 points at home versus away, 14.3 points per game. So obviously big home field advantage for them there with playoff contention on their back. So let's bring in Jake. Let's go over this Odds Jam screen a little bit. I'm going to bring in Jake's screen. We have a few player props. We've talked about Odds Jam before. Again, a great site if you want to get the best lines for all props and games in general. It really gives you an overlay of all of that. Let's start with your prop, actually, Jake, with Josh Allen. You'd like him to go over 23 and a half passing attempts. I believe the model has him at 27.
Yeah, 23 and a half completions. So using the Odds Jam optimizer, this has the screen here. You could see just this is underdogs page right here, but you could go and you can navigate through prize picks. You could navigate through flip. You can parlay play. But so I use this page and then I find lines based on the odds. So all the percent chance to hit is based on the odds and the VIG. So if you look here, based on it being at -154, 33 and a half passing attempts, -120 on underdog, 33 and a half at -140 on Barstool Sportsbook. So looking at the past completions, they actually got bumped up to 24. I got it at 23 and a half earlier. So now you see, based on it getting bumped up, it was probably 53% chance to hit when it was at 23 and a half. Now it's at 50.66. So less value. But then you can go through all the other books. And this is actually the under. If you go to the over passing completions, you can just find the different lines. It's at 23 and a half on FanDuel. And we have it at 26 pass completions. And I think that just because Denver likes to drop in zone, he's going to have a lot of dump offs to Dalton Kincaid, a couple of passes to James Cook. I think he shouldn't pass the ball a ton. I think it's hit in all of his home games this season.
Okay. Yeah, I like that there. Let's move over. Steven also has a prop going over to the Bears side. Running back prop here. McLaughlin over 15 and a half rushing yards. Steven, we can head over to your screen for that situation over here.
Yeah. So his numbers been bet. He's been an explosive running back. He's been that. There's been Achane, now Keaton Mitchell for the Ravens, and then Jaleel McLaughlin, these super fast, dynamic rookie runners. And he's been averaging 7 yards a carry. Now, last game, Javonte Williams was back and had the lion's share of carries, 25-4. But McLaughlin still went over this number easily. He still had 33 yards in those 4 carries. What I like about this is the odds makers have Javonte Williams at 54.5 on the consensus. And Denver's been averaging around 120 rushing yards a game. And Buffalo, with their injuries at linebacker, Milano, and elsewhere, they've done a decent job. They haven't fallen apart, but they still are allowing a decent number of yards per carry. So if you like Denver, I think Denver's good for 100, 110 yards. And half that's going to go to Javonte. Then I think that Jaleel McLaughlin is minimally due for half of the remaining half, so 25%, which would put him right around 30 yards. So that's our projection, has him at 33. I like the fact that, again, you can get 15 and a half and -110 on FanDuel. That's it's a great price. It's much lower than the you see elsewhere, 17.5, 19.5. So get that before it moves. It'll probably move up pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely seems like an act now play. Jason keeping me humble. I think I just called them the Bears instead of the Broncos. So that's Monday for you. Any more Monday Night Football questions, please ask in the chat. I did see Big Cheesy earlier asking about Diggs anytime touchdown at -120. Curious to see what the model has to say there and if there's really any value at -120.
Let me see. Well, I look. I also have a question. Is because I think that Jacob might be moonlighting at Odds Jam. He's been talking about for a year, just so people know, and I'm not sure why. He seems to love them so much. If you love them so much, maybe they'll pay you. Let's see. What am I? Sorry, snide comment. We have him at 70%, 0.7 touchdowns per simulation. There are simulations where he has 1, 2, 3. So that probably equates to around a 65% chance. So what is the line on that? -120. We would like that over.
Cool. All right.
Anytime.
Good.
We'd like that anytime value.
Awesome. All right, good stuff there. While we have your guys' screen up, let's go back to Odds Jam. Let's move into the NBA a little bit. We have some value plays for the NBA tonight. Jake has a player prop himself. Let me bring that up here. Siakam over 11.5 rebounds and assists. What's that line on the model there, Jake? 13?
Yeah, we have him at 13. This is one of those plays against Washington's defense. You want to get a team that's not going to kill them, but should beat them pretty easily. So you should rack up these stats. This is another one I used, the OddsJam Fantasy Optimizer. Maybe I should see if they could pay me some, Steven. And I think there's plenty of value here. I would shop around. It's been moving pretty quickly here. Was it -122 on FanDuel there? That's pretty good value. I just think he should rack this up, even if they're killing them, maybe in 3 quarters. He's coming off a big rebounding game in his last game, and he'll have plenty of assist opportunities against Washington's defense.
Mm-hmm. A couple NBA questions in the chat. I'll let you answer those quick, Jake. Let's move into 2 model value plays we have here on the board. We'll start with the Raptors here, laying 9, going to Jordan Poole and the Wizards.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of value to tonight's NBA, but this one struck out me because -9 is still available even right now. If it's 9.5, pretty much everywhere else, so you probably want to get that. Model line is -12 because we have Washington coming under the 109.5 team total. Washington's averaging, they're shooting just 35% from 3. Toronto is allowing just 104 at home. They've been allowing 33% shooting from the 3-point line. So that should hopefully lead to a lot of rebounds for Siakam. Nice, easy defensive rebounds, in addition to Toronto covering.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, Jared Allen. I think you want to act now. 20.5. I did see it still available half an hour ago, but it may have ticked up to 21.5 pretty much everywhere. The over is 29-7 in his road games. The model line's 23.5. The average is down to he's averaging just 20.8 in the 4 games this season, which is why the line was set lower. But he started the season injured, and so he's been slowly increasing his minutes, and he's been up to that 28-minute range for the last 3 games. And his over, even though he's only at 20.8, is still 3-1. So I looked it up. Against Sabonis in his 2 games last year, he had 32 and 33 minutes. So hopefully they need his defense on Sabonis and the size, so he should be good for that 30 minutes. I assume his health is okay, and if that's the case, then I like him to get 21 here.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like the move with these NBA props is just trying to figure out who's willing to play the entire game and who's getting the minutes to actually go over these numbers, because it's certainly not everyone, and that is a puzzle in itself, figuring out who's playing through a full game.
Yeah.
Let's go back to some questions on the NBA while we're here. Go back to the model. The Kings without Fox tonight. See if they still have any value as 4-point dogs.
The latest consensus line I had was 3. We had the model line is at Cleveland -4, so no value there. Eyeballing. I don't see anything. There could be some player prop value with Karis LeVert. He's had 2 big games in a row, but that's about it. Harrison Barnes too. He's really hit or miss, but he sometimes is a kind of a zigzag player, And if that's the case, after his 1 for 8 his last game, this might be the zag to his bad zig.
Yeah. What about Garland here with 6.5 assists? Nick was asking about.
We have him projected for 7 assists. Is there a juice on that? We would agree with that. I can do a quick assessment. Yeah, his over, he averages a lot more at home, but still his over is still 57.5% in his road games going back to last year. But this season he's had fewer assists. Again, he had some injury issues, so I think his minutes were down in some of those games. He missed some time.
Okay.
But so he should be I think that's a good spot.
Okay. I see some more NBA questions coming in. So, Steven, I'm going to let you go in the chat and answer those with the model. Jake, let's go over some college football. Coming off a big weekend in college football, some things to act now on, some confusing things. But let's start with Jacksonville State. Right now, 9.5-point favorites versus Louisiana Tech, and there's definitely some steam coming in on Jacksonville, right?
Yeah, I think 75% of the public is on Jacksonville State, even more, might be closer to 80% now. So, and the model has Jacksonville State minus 18 in this game. I know they've had a couple injury question marks with their quarterbacks, but they're coming off a bye, so they should be a little healed up. I'd get this now at minus 9.5 before it moves to 10.5. You're getting a key number here.
Okay. Good stuff there. Let's move to Michigan, now going to Maryland. We've seen some reverse line movement here, a little Uno reverse moment. Public and it seems like the public and the smart money are not exactly agreeing. We've seen this line move down to 19.5. Any idea why that would be?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Michigan, they beat Penn State last week. You would assume that they didn't beat Penn State with this line movement. The public's all over Michigan here. The lines moved 2 points in favor of Maryland. So this is just a questionable line movement. Yeah, I think it probably has to do with Harbaugh not coaching. But still, even without Harbaugh, that's interesting. I think maybe because Maryland hung up there with Michigan last year, it was just a 7-point game. But then if you look at the games at Maryland compared to the games at Ann Arbor, the games in College Park have all favored Michigan. Michigan's beaten Maryland by 21 plus in every single game that they've played in College Park. So we have this line right around Michigan minus 21. So it's interesting to see this line movement. We don't necessarily have a ton of value, but it's always interesting to point out reverse line movement.
Yeah. Before we get to that last one, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you with some college basketball today. Just figure you might know about this one. Pitt going to versus Florida college basketball. Do you know anything about that? Any value there in your head?
Yeah, so that game's in, I think, a couple weeks, actually. So that game's not tonight, so I don't think there's any model picks out there right now for this game because I don't think there's a line.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll certainly be touching it when it comes, but I know you'll be all over it when we're ready for that.
Yeah, because Gators play Florida A&M and then FSU in their next 2 games. I know that. So, Pitt versus Florida Gulf Coast. So that makes sense.
We can head to the model there quick if we want.
Let's see. I mean, Florida Gulf Coast is a tricky team. They have some talent. Their coach was Penn State's old coach. We like Pitt, but Pitt lost a lot. They had a lot of roster turnover. So it's early in the season. So last year, if the game were last year, we would have really liked Pitt. So that's why the model likes Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
So there is good value in Pitt, but I just feel a little hesitant on the backdoor cover here.
Yeah, maybe one of those teams that we wait to get a little more data on with a different roster this year. One more question really quick, and we'll head back. Duquesne minus the 13. Let's see. I'm not positive.
Yeah, so we faded Duquesne, and it hurt us against Charleston. That game was crazy. So we had Charleston money line against Duquesne. Charleston was down 22-5. They took the lead before half, and they were up 4 in the second half, and then Duquesne stormed back. So that was a pretty crazy game. I got Charleston plus 10.5 live line. And I was like, oh, I'm looking good. And then Duquesne ended up just storming back. Duquesne's a really good team. I know the model does love them tonight.
22.5. love them
But
tonight.
Stony Brook lost their best player, ironically, to that Charleston team. With Stony Brook, I think they had a decent amount of roster turnover, so I'd maybe either bet on Duquesne or get a live line here, depending on how Stony Brook looks early.
Okay. Good stuff there. More questions in the chat, but let's get through your one more college football play, which is interesting to talk about. This is an act now, depending on what side of this you're on. We have Illinois, Iowa, over under 30.5. Now, typically Iowa unders are the move, but we're seeing a different situation here because Illinois is dealing with a lot of injuries to make them pass the ball, right?
Yeah, so who would ever bet on Iowa over? I don't know, maybe we're crazy, but Illinois is different than Rutgers, Northwestern, Wisconsin, teams that they've played because they throw the ball much more. And with Caden Fegan, their true freshman running back, going down last week, Illinois is down to Reggie Love and a bunch of walk-ons. So maybe this is the time to bet on Iowa because you could get a couple of pick sixes here. John Paddock was a late start, announced as a late starter after Altmaier was scratched from the lineup for Illinois against Indiana, and he threw for almost 500 yards against Indiana, and he had to throw the ball pretty much every down. Right. So we have this at 35 points. I don't know if I'd recommend taking an over in an Iowa game. We have some value because we like Iowa's team total over, and maybe because Illinois has to throw the ball so much, and they might get a couple pick sixes, a couple of defensive scores here. But Iowa's quarterback, his prop line was at 99.5 yards, and he threw for 215 yards in their last game against Rutgers, which is like the equivalent of any other quarterback throwing for 800 yards. That's like Mahomes numbers right there. So maybe this is the place to get the time to get Iowa over 30.5.
It's such a bizarre situation because the way you're talking about this, it seems like an Iowa team total is the move, which is so odd to say. There's nothing, the only thing this group loves more than Iowa unders is regressions to the mean. So this might be one of those weeks where we just finally taken over on Iowa. So
I actually went through True Media and was looking at all the lowest closing totals for any team, and Iowa has it at, I think their average closing total is like 35.75, and the next is 37 with a 1995 Oregon State team. So I think they got that pretty secure. This team is built different.
Yeah. It's interesting things going on. Steven pointing out how the Iowa fan base has not been happy with me all year in my viral TikTok videos, not being very nice to their offense. But you know what? It all spoke for itself, so I take nothing back. All right, that's all we have for college football right now. I'm going to bring in Steven. We're going to move back into some NFL, some things we couldn't go over last night. And some things we can readdress because we have some act now situations going on. Let's start with an act now here with Detroit. This is a spread you want to get on now and possibly an over for Chicago.
Yeah, it's moved to 9.5 in most spots, and the model, it went from 45 as a look ahead to 46.5 when it reopened. The model line is over 50 on the over under, and then 11.5 for Detroit. Justin Fields, I think, will be back, but even with Tyson Bagent, Chicago's been able to put up some points at 20ish, around 20. Detroit, they had a really impressive win versus the Chargers, but they did give up a lot of points in a high-scoring game. Detroit averages well over 30 going back to last year at home. So I think a 30 to 19 score could be in order here. But yeah, it's probably going to move to 10, so you probably want to get that before it does.
Yeah, and God knows we need an over in the NFL right now. Something a little more entertaining. All right, another play we can move on to. This is interesting, not necessarily a pick here, but just a lot of shop around opportunity on the spread and also on the over under as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Ravens played this past Sunday. I must have missed it. Nothing happened. But both teams got really, laid eggs in some ways. But the steam, we thought last night would go from Baltimore 2.5, maybe to -3, but it actually went to 3.5, 4, which is surprising to me. And you look into it, it's probably because of the injury. So Trey Hendrickson is now hurt. So Sam Hubbard on the other side missed the Houston game. I don't know if he'll be back for the Thursday game. So they could be out without their two leading pass rushers. Ronnie Stanley could be out for Baltimore, but without Cincinnati's pass rusher. Cincinnati's only had 2 total sacks last 2 weeks, 1 each week. Then on the other side, T. Higgins is probably out. And even though he had a big statistical game, Jamar Chase was well under 100% against Houston. So even Marlon Humphrey's probably out for Baltimore. So the injuries on both sides seem to be kind of knocking each other out. I think in this case, it's going to be a simple thing where Baltimore really played Cincinnati well last year on defense. They held that offense to 17 or less offensive points in all 3 games. And I think that is going to start. That's with the smart money. The public's, last I checked, is well over 80% early on Cincinnati. So for the line to move good 1.5 or even 1.5 points is the smart money is actually on Baltimore, especially up that key number of -3. That's what was surprising to me. So that's one to shop around and one to keep your eyes and ears out as far as injury goes.
Yeah. A few people asking about this. Just want to hit on it quick in the chat, asking about the Cowboys game here. Last night, we recommended to take them at the -9. However, the line's now 11. Not as much value coming from the model now that line's at 11, right?
Yeah, well, so this is a case where we said it would steam hard to even 12 maybe, and it's going to go that way. But I'm ashamed to say the model has slight value on Carolina. I was not going to publicize that. And it does because Carolina's defense, if you go back to last year, it's much better at home. They allowed 5 fewer points last year at home, like 19.5 points. Then this year, I think they're also under 20 at home. So that, with the weighting and everything else, is keeping the Dallas offense relatively from exploding for 40. And Carolina, their offense is abysmal, and we know that they can't move the ball. But I think they're also playing scared to the point that they don't want to throw interceptions, and they don't necessarily want to turn the ball over. So I think Carolina will be excited if they lose 23-13. But I would never bet Carolina, even if the model has value on it.
Could be another Bryce Young rushing prop moment, just fighting for his life and trying to get through this game here. So we'll look into that.
I do like that.
Big Cheesy, I will remember this comment. I'm going to keep this stored in my brain, and we'll see about this in a few weeks, okay? Just going to remember that one. All right, one more game to go over here. Let's talk about one game we couldn't get to last night. Vegas going to Miami. Achane possibly back. However, Vegas has this new motivation. That's kind of hard to quantify in a model. So what are we thinking?
Yeah. No, yeah. So, but I mean, you're going to see the eye test that Vegas loves playing for Antonio Pierce, and they did a 180 in terms of attitude and everything else. Now, the problem is their defense is really impressive statistics, holding their last 2 opponents to just 18 total points, but those were the Jets and the Giants. It's the Tommy DeVito Giants and the Zach Wilson Jets. Miami coming off a bye, Achane probably back. It seems like no matter how much you're going to try, there's only so much you can try versus Mike McDaniel when he has some extra time to plan for things. Mm-hmm. And it's not like Aiden O'Connell at quarterback hasn't been that great. And Miami's defense has even more time with Jalen Ramsey back for what I think will be his 3rd game. Their pass rush seems to be getting improved. So the model is leaning Miami and likes the over, but again, it does depend on Achane being back.
I missed him because he was a great player prop for us. So hopefully we can see him back in the lineup. All right.
Luckily, we got Keaton Mitchell.
Yes, this is true. Plenty of stuff to digest from today's show, and we have plenty more tomorrow. A lot of college football storylines that are interesting to go over. So just going to tease that out there. Really important show to see as those line moves and how all these coaching situations are affecting the line. So with that said, good luck with your bets tonight. NBA, Monday Night Football. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. with plenty more, and good luck tonight.